to Policing TV, where I'm delighted to be joined by David Brown and David Holden, who for many years have been the driving force and still are behind the Emergency Services Show. We're going to talk about the this year's show shortly, and indeed the future for the Emergency Services Show. But David and David, I'd like first to start, if we could, with you telling us something about the journey that you have been on since the initial thought of the Emergency Services Show through to roughly the present day. Tell us about the journey that the Emergency Services Show and you have both been on.
Well, thank you for that, Bernard. So David and I first met back in the late 90s. So we were both working on a magazine for the fire sector called Fire Times. And David had always had the idea for a multi-agency magazine. So we launched Emergency Services Times in the year 2000. And we ran that together. David was on the advertising sales side, and I was the editor. And I know that David had a trade exhibition background, so he was always putting together business plans for a multi-agency show that we could spin off the back of the magazine, where the advertisers were the exhibitors and the readers were the visitors. So we launched eventually in the Royal Horticultural Halls in Victoria. I would advise against launching on a Friday. Thursday and a Friday in London, but we launched successfully. And when I look back now, did we invite anyone? I don't remember having a huge marketing machine, and we certainly didn't have name badges, but we pulled it off, and the industry sort of embraced it, and the rest is history, really. We moved the show up to Stoneleigh Park in 2007. And then we sort of outgrew that venue and eventually ended up at the NEC from 2013 onwards. So it's very much been
National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham. National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham.
That's right.
The choice of sizes of hall at the NEC are large, very, very large, and absolutely, choose your word, enormous. So you have had plenty of opportunity to expand there. Let's focus now, if we may. So that's a tiny smidgen about your journey so far, but I do want us to focus on the show this year and what's on offer. David Brown, shall I come to you first on this? There's a great deal to talk about, so I suspect
Hello, everyone.
if you start, and then David H can pick up.
Okay.
I think I just want to go back a step. I think what David admitted to say about moving to the NEC was that we actually had our own disaster at the show in terms of 2011. The show was hit by a massive storm, and we had a temporary structure as one of the halls. And that actually, we had to close the show at 1 o'clock in the afternoon due to bolts falling out of the ceiling, and a health and safety point of view. So it's kind of ironic that we organised the emergency services
Do you know?
show.
I think I was actually at. I think I was actually at that show that day. I do remember that quite
I've
well.
blanked
Actually.
that from my memory, which is why I didn't bring it up for all the counselling I'm going to have to.
And what's really ironic about it is that last year, for the first time since 2011, I returned to the Stoneleigh Park to visit another exhibition, and it was set out exactly the same. It was the two halls plus a marquee tent, and I had cold sweat coming through me. It was just reminded me. But having said that, the move to the NEC really put us on the map. We're in the largest hall in the UK from corner to corner. It's a quarter of a mile long, and to fill that with 450 exhibitors is fantastic.
Tell us. Let me ask about those exhibitors. The emergency services show, you would imagine, would have police, fire, ambulance. There are other potential contributors and attendees and exhibitors. But what sorts of companies do you have exhibiting at this year's show, which takes place, remind me, its dates in September, isn't it?
It's the 18th and 19th of September. You can see more details on the show at www.emergencyuk.com. But we've got such a variety of exhibitors, and in actual fact, the show has expanded in so much as it's not only the emergency services show. Last year, we launched the emergency tech show to really reflect what is going on in the industry in terms of technology. So, technology is taking over everywhere in your home, work, and it's no different with the emergency services. So we've got a dedicated hall specifically for technology, and really hall 5 is your operational, your facilities, support companies for the emergency services. So it's from vehicles to clothing to medical equipment to training equipment, operational equipment. So it's everything that is used at the scene and prior the prevention side as well at the scene of an incident.
Yeah, just to pick up on
David,
that, David. Yeah,
please.
I just wanted to mention that we are police, fire, ambulance, but we target the show at all category 1 and 2 responders. So the net casts very wide, and if we have a mission statement, it is to prepare our emergency services for every response. So that is in the planning phases, the response, and then the recovery from emergencies. And it's not only the major incidents that we are looking at. We're looking at the everyday. And so whether that is the response to flooding, an extrication on a roadside, or just the everyday policing of an incident, it's the kit that is used. And going back to the reason why we launched, it was because we saw that commonality of the supplier supplying, very nuanced bits of kit to each service, but it was the same supplier supplying the clothing to police, fire, ambulance. It was the same vehicle supplier supplying different vehicles to police, fire, and ambulance. And we were able to provide a home for a trade exhibition where that one supplier could reach a multi-agency market.
So, David H., continue if you would. I'm going to ask you now about the presenters, those presenting. It's not just clearly about the exhibitors; it's also about the speakers and the program of speakers that you plan for the days of the show. Tell us about those sessions that you've got organised and something about those speakers.
So I mentioned earlier I was the editor of Emergency Services Times for over 20 years, and a couple of years ago I was lucky enough to ask Catherine Levin to become the editor of the magazine, and she's been very instrumental in curating the content of the stages at the show. We've got 4 main stages, that is the policing stage, the tech main stage, the policing and skills stage, and we've also got a stage there for sustainability this year, which is a new focus, I know, for all emergency services. We've also got a stage focused on firefighter PPE because there's a large firefighter PPE tender coming up. So we're working closely with the NFCC on the content for that. But what we try and do, our USP for the show is multi-agency. So we make sure that those panels that are presenting are multi-agency panels that are coming from a multi-agency perspective. And even with the policing stage, which is single service, we're making sure that the content on there is applicable to multi-agency and how those other agencies are involved in policing, whether that's through knife crime, whether it's violence against women and girls, how the other agencies interacting with the police in those areas.
So,
Dave.
and that's a big focus. Equally, is looking at protection of the protectors. So there's a big focus on the carcinogens that the fire and rescue service are unfortunately facing, and that equally applies to police and the ambulance service through body-worn cameras. And there's a big variety of different suppliers providing invaluable solutions for the emergency services. And of course, one of the big things at the moment is lithium batteries. So it's not only electric vehicle fires, which would affect all the emergency services. It's vapes, it's scooters, it's mobile, it's the electric vehicles or bikes rather, and we've got some really good suppliers of some unique kit because there isn't a one solution that would put out these types of fires.
So, before we move on to the future for the Emergency Services Show and the Emergency Tech Show, I'm just going to mention that you've been kind enough to invite me to
Hmm.
run a session where we have a couple of great speakers on the topic. What can the emergency services performance management learn from elite sports management? Which I think, perhaps I would say this, wouldn't I, is an absolutely fascinating topic. I was privileged to meet just a few days ago the um, All Blacks former manager, the Blacks manager over 20 years, an 85% winning record. So I think there's something that will have to interest our audience there. But to the future, then, it's fascinating to see the journey of the Emergency Services Show. You're now working within 19 Group, which I'm sure will give you the opportunity to move forward by leaps and bounds. So, what have you got in store for 2025 and beyond? Who am I coming to for this?
I can take that one, Bernard. So, as part of 19 Group, so Broden Media, as it was, so David and I have owned the company since 2012, and we sold to 19 Group in 2019. So, the idea there was that, as you know, we're from a publishing background, and we wanted some trade show help. We knew the potential of the show, and we wanted to make sure that we maximised that potential with the help of some trade show expertise. And the beauty of 19 Group is that we're private equity owned, and that means that we are backed by a company that will help us to invest in the show and grow where we see potential and where we can prove that there is a market for that. And one of those areas is to understand that the emergency services show and the incidents that are covered aren't just, they're not localized to the UK, they're worldwide. Every country has emergencies, but those emergencies are sometimes quite nuanced to where they are. So what we're going to do in November 2025 is to launch the Emergency Services Show Asia, and that will be based in Singapore. But it will very much be targeted at the region, the APAC region and the surrounding countries. And we've opened an office in Singapore, and we have a team there who are on the ground and making sure that they're working with local associations and they're working to understand as I say, the nuances of the region, so that we don't cover earthquakes and typhoons at the Emergency Services Show, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do in Singapore. We have to make sure that what we're putting on is right for the local audience, and that's so we've got. I think I looked on our calendar. We've got 72 weeks until that show opens, so we've got a long runway, but it's going to be a lot of hard work to do. But it's a very exciting sort of spin-off. The Emergency Services Show will continue to run in September in the UK, and then November 2025 we'll see the launch of ESS Asia.
So, for our audience, pencil in your diary for November 2025. I don't know whether you have a date at the moment, but November 2025.
We do. The 11th to the 13th of November.
Okay, so find your way to Singapore for those dates in next year, and let's have a reminder of the dates for this year's show. So, in closing, dates for this year's show and location, and how people can go about registering, getting tickets, and so on and so forth. I think maybe you have some stand space left, and would welcome approaches from exhibitors.
So the dates for this
David
year,
Brown.
the dates for this year are the 18th and 19th of September. you can register at emergencyuk.com. The entry is free of charge, and there's free parking at the venue as well. All the seminar theatres are CPD accredited, so we'll give certificates to visitors who attend those seminar sessions. And overall, we've got a big theme on training at the show. It's all preparation and operational side, so it's open to all ranks of the industry, and in particular, I think the buzzword seems to be back to collaboration. It's so important for all the emergency services to work together, to understand each other's way of working, and it's just a great opportunity to visitors to come to learn, look at new equipment, and share experiences.
Well, I will be there, as I've already indicated. I'll look forward, David and David, to meeting you both there. Look forward to meeting some or many, indeed, of our Policing TV viewers there. Do come up and say hello during the show if you're one of our viewers. And I think that then is an appropriate point to bring this to a close. David Brown, David Holden, thank you so much for telling us something about the Emergency Services show and the Emergency Tech show. Thank you very much.
Thank
Absolute
you,
pleasure.
Bernard, and look forward to seeing all your viewers at the show in September.